Hello everyone, this is Namita Chaudhary here, and today I am going to start the chapter Ruling the Countryside. So here are the Dalmia core values which you are gonna develop from this session. So the value is compassion and the life skill is media literacy. So here is the chapter Ruling the Countryside. So in this chapter, we will read about the British and the Indian cultivators. So as you can see, the first topic is the company becomes the Diwan. On 12th August 1765, Robert Clive, on behalf of East India Company, accepted the Diwani of Bengal from the Mughal ruler. The company became the chief financial administrator of the territory under its control, and so the company had to think and plan the organization of Bengal in such a way that it could earn maximum profit out of the territory, profits that could be used to finance their businesses and wars. As a foreign power, the company realized that it needed to manage the local rulers in India's villages because they were respected by the locals and removing them might anger the common people. The second topic is now revenue for the company, right? The company primarily saw itself as a trader, not as an administrator. They made effort to increase their revenue as they could. Within 5 years, the company export from India doubled. Before 1765, they had to purchase goods in India by importing gold and silver from British. But now they can finance their purchase with the revenue generated. But the economy of Bengal suffered deeply. Peasants were unable to pay the dues and artisanal production fell because the company bought the artisans' goods at low prices by force. As a result of such exploitative practices and high prices, there was a famine in Bengal in 1770 that killed 10 million people, a third of Bengal's population. So here you can see the images that how the people of Bengal are moving out from the state. So you can also see the life of the Bengalis. Okay, at that time, the need to improve agriculture. The dwindling revenue led the company to reconsider its strategy. In 1793, they introduced Jamindari system and encouraged new Jamindars to invest in land to improve agriculture. The taxes were fixed permanently and not to be increased in future, and this was called permanent settlement. What was the problem? The problem were initially the Jamindars were not investing in the lands and tax was so high that Jamindars were not able to pay and sold their rights altogether to bigger Jamindars. With the passage of time, the conditions improved and prices increased, which led Jamindars to reap the profit, but not the company as taxes were permanently fixed. However, Jamindars were still not investing in improvement of the land and leased the land on very low price. The cultivators found this system as highly oppressive and sometimes forced to take loans or even evicted from the land. So this was the permanent settlement and problems. Now second one was Mehelwari system. So now we will talk about Mehelwari system. In the northwestern provinces of the Bengal Presidency, now part of modern day Uttar Pradesh, Holt Mackenzie proposed a new tax revenue system known as Mehalwari system. This system came into effect in 1822. In this system, taxes were calculated on the village, and village were the mahal. So village level, after inspecting and measuring the fields and analyzing the local tradition. The taxes were revised periodically and not fixed. The charge of collecting taxes were given to the village headman, not jamindar. So these were the differences between Mehalwari and the permanent settlement. Now the third one was the Munro system, or you can say Royatwari settlements. In southern provinces, a similar system was introduced known as the Munro system or Royatwari settlement, named after Thomas Munro, then governor of Madras. It was first tried on small scale by Captain Alexander Reed on the scale in areas taken over from Tipu Sultan. Unlike northern provinces, the British here tried to get taxes directly from the cultivators, and the cultivators were called the ryots. So that's why it was called Royatwari settlement. However, the system failed as the tax was too high and cultivators deserted the villages to countryside. Here you can see the image of Thomas Munro, governor of Madras, from 1819 to 26. Now the next topic is crops for Europe. In order to make higher revenue, the British persuaded or forced cultivators to grow commercial crops such as indigo, opium, jute, tea, sugarcane, wheat, cotton, and rice. India was the leading indigo producer at that time. Here you can see this is the image of indigo plant. So indigo, from ancient times, India was known for its indigo production. It was used to make blue colored dye and popular among cloth manufacturers in Italy, France, and Britain. However, its prices were steep and not every European could buy it. They compromised with the wood plant to make violet and blue dyes, which were pale and dull. In order to meet the rising indigo demand, the French started cultivating indigo in Saint Domingo in the Caribbean islands, the Portuguese in Brazil, the English in Jamaica, and the Spanish in Venezuela. However, due to some reasons, the world indigo production fell by half between 1783 and 1789, and British, seeking the opportunity, turned India for indigo production. The British rapidly expanded the area under indigo cultivation during the last decades of the 18th century, and by 1810, Indian indigo accounted for 95% of all indigo imported by the Britain. Many company officials left their well-paid jobs to become indigo planters. The company also provided them loans if they do not have the money. So this was the blue colored dye that was called indigo, and it was highly demandable in all over the Europe. Now we will talk about the indigo cultivation. There were two systems of how indigo was cultivated, niche and rayati. In niche system, planters produced indigo in lands that they control directly. So you can understand that what was niche system. In niche system, planters produced indigo in lands that they control directly. the land is either owned by the planter or leased from the zamindars. However, the planters found it difficult to expand the area under niche cultivation. The second was in Rayati system, the planters persuaded or pressurized the village headmen to sign the contract on behalf of the riots. Here, they receive loans on low interest rates and required to cultivate indigo on at least 25% of land. When crop was delivered after the harvest, a new loan was given to the riot and cycle continues. However, the price paid to the peasants was very low and the loan cycle never ends. Now, what were the major problems with indigo cultivation? So, here are the problems with indigo cultivation. Indigo could be cultivated only on a fertile land and a large area was required. However, Indian farmers had only a small holding and they find it difficult to get lease for new holdings. The plantation also required a large number of labor and precisely at the time when they were busy with the rice cultivation. It also required a large amount of initial investment which Indian and most of the farmers could not afford. Indigo was a mineral intensive crop and depleted the quality of soil pretty quickly. After indigo plantation, the land could not be used for another crop. So these were the problems of the indigo cultivation. So we in today's session, we talked about the permanent settlement, then Mehalwari settlement and the Munro settlement. And after that, we talked about the indigo cultivation and the problems. We will meet again in the next session and till then, goodbye and take care, stay home, stay safe.